Hi everybody. Today I want to talk about the Festool LR32 System. I purchased the system for drilling shelf pin holes and drawer slide holes, but I soon found out that it was a little bit confusing on how I should set up the guide rail, specifically when drilling drawer slide holes, and how I was going to incrementally move the guide rail in an accurate way, because the locating pins for the system are rather short, or these setup bars here. These setup bars, which attach to this system here, aren't very long. If you can notice here, you can set, it doesn't really zoom here so well, but you can set the first hole for 37, but it doesn't go back very far after that. And in order to set up this guide rail in an accurate way, I was going to need a tape measure or some other way to increment these things accurately. So I found online another guy on the FOG who recommended using longer bars, and I went to McMaster-Carr and purchased these longer setup bars, which I thought this is going to be able to work pretty well. So I could set up this and exchange those bars when I wanted to use drill out the holes a little bit deeper. But I still didn't like the idea of having to use these longer bars and manually locating again these things onto a rule that I would have to then apply on here, and it just seemed like this was going to be something that could be troublesome in the future. So I wanted a way that would allow me to use this system in a very easy to remember and consistent way, since I don't do this for a living and I have a lot of time in between getting into the shop making cabinets. So I ended up thinking about the problem for a while and realized that using my MFT table, or an MFT style table with the 96mm holes, that I could come up with a jig that would allow me to make incremental adjustments in 32mm increments. And what I ended up doing was designing this little plate here, and I 3D printed it. It's not very thick at all, maybe, I don't know, a couple millimeters at most. Doesn't need to be very thick, but I've specifically offset this 20mm hole here so that each side, other than these first two, they're the same, but each side is a different length. And this ultimately allows me to incrementally move the panel in a way that allows the drill hole boring to be incremented in 32mm increments. So this one in particular has been set up for my drawer slide that I am using on my cabinets, which is a 22-inch KV8450 FM model slide. I'm not familiar with other drawer slides and whether they all retain a consistent dimensions between the holes. I know that even on this specific model, as you have shorter or longer slides, they can change, but I'm not sure if all 22-inch drawer slides retain the same position. So let's go into a little bit more depth of how this works. As you may or may not be able to read here, probably this camera doesn't zoom in so well, but this is the diagram for the KV8450 FM model drawer slide. And here you can see, maybe, these drawer slides in different lengths. And here there is a 12-inch drawer slide at the bottom, going all the way to a 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, and 28-inch deep drawer slide. Now, there are specific holes that are meant to be used when you fasten this with the Euro-style drawer screws. And there is a hole right up front. There is another hole here, but then you can see on this drawer slide that hole is not there. It's offset a little bit. And if you further go up, this particular one follows all the rest of them. But then if you go to the next slide, there is no hole here, but there is here. And these ones follow up. So you can see that these drawer slides have different positions where this screw needs to be fastened. However, the main thing to notice is that where it describes the distance between all of these holes, they are in increments of 32 millimeters times some number. Like this distance is 96, and so those are 3 32s. And so that's the important thing to note here. Specifically for the drawer slide, I am using a 22-inch. I have identified the distance that is needed to get to each of the mounting holes here that I need to be drilling. So now I know that the number of increments of 32 that I need to get for each of these holes. I wrote them down on this setup block here that basically shows me that when I want to drill the first hole at 37, this will be located in the first row of holes, hole 1, and I will use this side down where the panel butts up to it on my MFT style table. When I then want to drill the next hole here, which happens to be at 165, I can see here that I need to be in hole 3, or 3 rows above where the panel is or where the guide rail is located. And so that gives me the 165. When I then am ready to drill the next hole, which here happens to be 61, sorry, I need to be in hole 4 above the guide rail, which gives me 261. And finally, when I need to do the last hole here at 389, I then need to be in hole 5 above the guide rail and use this side. So the difference between all of these sides are incremented by 32 millimeters, and by figuring out, well, how many increments do I have to do, I'm able to then figure out, well, how many holes do I need to go up on the MFT style table, and which side do I need to use in order to achieve that. And so for my reference, and as a cheat sheet here, I have labeled these, so I know that 1 hole up from the guide rail gives me my first hole. I then need to go up 3 holes, which gives me my next hole, go up another hole, gives me my next hole, go up another hole, and use this side for my final hole. This gives me my 4 holes for my drawer slide. And now I will show you how I use this system. Alright, so I've set up here this is an 80/20 sys cart that I have on the outfeed side of my table saw. My panel here, this happens to be a panel that has edge banding on it. It doesn't really matter, but the point is that you need to label your parts, because you want the front to be here. The way that this system works here is this needs to be referenced. Actually, when I showed it beforehand, I had things going the opposite way, but your first hole references from the distance from here when you use the actual old way, the front here, and you need to label the top. Specifically because even though this panel has its these little adapters here that set this piece so it's aligned this way, and even though these holes are technically balanced all the way across, meaning that the first hole here is the same distance as the first hole here, but because of the way that my cabinet is designed, here is one of them that is not yet finished, but you can see it's got drawers that are all equidistant or equal size, and the drawer slide goes on the bottom. So here I have labeled the where the drawer slide is going to be located, and on this one I have used arrows that indicate the direction towards the top, because when I do the opposite panel, the top will be on this side, because the front will be here but the top will be here. I don't want to drill the wrong holes, which I have accidentally done. So I have labeled this, which direction is the top. So this would be my bottom of my first drawer, bottom of my second drawer, bottom of my third drawer. But on the other panel side, when this top happens to be on this side, this is going to be the bottom, first drawer, second drawer, third drawer. So I've also set these stickers so that they show up clearly underneath the this little window here, so you can see it, and I'll demonstrate that here in a minute. So basically what happens is this panel gets aligned between these, so the guide rail is positioned correctly so that it's not moving and it's locked in. You then want to shift everything to the left here up against these. This is my fence here. I'm using this guide close fit dog here. I have another one here. I guess technically I could even move that up here. He only needs those two, really. This is now not fitting in here anymore, so you obviously need this to be fitting correctly. There it is. It just dropped in. And everything needs to be pushed up against this fence here. So everything's aligned. Now, as I said before, hole 1, what I can see here is from where this, you can see that this would be where a dog hole would be if you were using an MFT. It would just be half of a dog hole. That's not what it is for hole 1. Hole 1 is the next one that you see up here, which I have happened to drill out. And so I fit that in here as hole 1, and I happen to put these over here on this side because especially when you get to something like this, this is offset and it can rock. If it was over here, I think that you would rock it more like this. But being that it is off over here on the right, it tends to balance itself out when I push it forward. So I have my holes over here. If you were using an MFT table, I would recommend not using over here, but more towards this side of the panel. But anyways, the first hole here is like this, and then I slowly push the panel up against it, and I also make that sure that the panel is up against this fence. Now, when I take and I put this on here, and I always, when I am clicking this, I make sure that I'm not dragging it away from the fence, but I am always pushing everything back against this fence and up against this little jig here. So when I set this up here, you can see that the arrow is clearly visible and it's pointing to the top. And when I label the top, I make sure that I put the label up here in this upper corner. If you put the label in the middle of the panel, you may not see it because of this guide rail here, and then you're going to forget and accidentally drill the wrong one. So I put the front right on top, and I put the top right here, but close to the corner so you can see it. So I would then come and I would drill this particular hole. I would slide over. I would drill the next hole. I would then drill the final hole here. This happens to be, the guide rail is going vertically, so you don't use this particular system with in that the drawer slides are going to sit this way, right? And you don't use this thing in the opposite way. So I am drilling the first hole for 3 drawer slides. After that, I need to drill the second hole for those. So how do I do that? Well, easy. The next one happens to be on here for this particular one that I need 3 holes up. 3 holes up from this happens to be here. And so I have to do this in multiple iterations here. I slide the panel forward, and here I go. I've got my second hole for the drawer slides. I would follow the same procedure, drilling this one, that one, and this one. And that is going to be my second hole. Now I need to get to the third hole on the drawer slide. How do I do that? I have to reset this because my table is not wide enough. So the reason that I start in the middle to begin with on this one is because when I reset this, I'm going to move these Parf Super Dogs down here to this first hole here and this first hole here, which also happens to be that hole for my guide rail when I'm cross cutting. However, if I started in that particular position and then I went to the first hole up above the guide rail, it would happen to be right here. Let's just say I don't have a whole lot lot of the board resting on the table, nor do I have with this one here, and then only one bench dog here. That doesn't really give me a whole lot to square this panel up, so that's not going to work out. So I have set it up so that I am starting here in this middle. I have enough of the panel on here, a distance of at least more than 12 inches, that I can get the panel squared up for my first hole. I then do my third hole here, when I say third hole, it's the second hole of the drawer slide, but hole 3 up from this. And then when I go to reset, this is rather easy, especially with the Parf Super Dogs. I just unscrew these. One-handed is a little bit maybe challenging, but we'll manage. I may need to set the camera down to get it to go back onto the panel, though. We'll see. Oh, can I do it? Magic. All right, the question is, can I get this way to work? Okay, I got that on there. Wow, surprised myself. Now, the third hole for the drawer slide, as I showed before, needs to be 4 holes up. So where is that? 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 holes. Needs to be pushed up against this, up against these as the fence, and again you would repeat 1, 2, and 3. This is the third hole in for the drawer slide. And this is the piece that I wasn't able to do on the MFT, was have enough holes to come up against that and drill my 4th set of hole on the drawer slide. I had to manually drill it out by hand, so I was just doing the first 3, then drilling the other one by hand. But I am able to do that on here. And how does that work out? Because I'm able to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 8 holes. You need 8 holes to be able to get those 4 holes for the drawer slide, and that is on a 22-inch drawer slide. If you're going deeper than the 22-inch drawer slide, you might need 9 holes deep of a wide table, and so the MFT, I believe, only has 7 deep. And so this table works out great. It is just a small table. It wasn't meant to be an MFT table. I just happened to put this top on here that the other MFT was resting on top of, but now I've decided that this particular table will be a table that slides underneath a bigger, larger assembly table and can be rolled out to be used as needed, which I kind of like because it has a lower height, and as I'm building something a little taller, it allows me to build it, especially in a short basement here. So anyways, this is the jig that I have come up with in the system that I have to be able to do this. And when I actually drill out the holes using this, it goes by really quick. There is no setting of the end stop to a particular measure of 389, 261, 165, making sure both are identical, attaching the rail, disattaching it, all that stuff. It goes away. I don't have to transport these large octagon rails. I transport this little black jig here in my LR32 sustainer. It's very simple and very easy to use. So I will demonstrate drilling out one panel here and just show you how quickly this actually goes when I am not actually trying to talk about what this thing does, but actually using it. So without further ado, let's take a look at this. Alright, so as I have said before, I have my first hole after the guide rail. Everything in here is lined up, lined to the fence, pushed up to here. I remember my top, these, this, and this. And let's go ahead and drill out these holes and see how it goes. So if you can see that here, you've got the first hole lined up, the second hole, the third hole, and the fourth hole. And now I could take my screws, drop them in here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now these particular screws are 11.5 millimeters long. And this is, I probably should have longer ones than that for this 3/4 inch thick panel. However, I didn't want to have 2 different bags of 1,000 screws. And I got these at 11.5 because the head itself and the amount that gets taken up by the thickness of this drawer glide only allows, I think, 9 millimeters to go into the actual panel, which, because this particular cabinet has a center partition in it, that allows the 9 and the 9 to come together at 18, and the panel is closer to 18.5 millimeters, and it allows them to not touch each other, so I can mount drawer slides back to back on the center panel in the correct hole without having to try to offset and use a different hole or something. So as you've seen, that went pretty quick. It probably only took, I don't know, a minute or two, and maybe 2 minutes. And I was able to quickly and accurately drill out this 32 millimeter spacing here without having to attach the bar to it, adjust it, do it on both sides, or lay out some tape measure and try to align the rule that way as well. Maybe that could even be quick too, I guess, if you took the tape measure and just drew a line on both ends and then just slid the thing down and tried to do that, but it might be moving all over the place and you might end up with something that's a little hit or miss. So this happens to be very accurate and repeatable. This jig can go into the LR32 very easily, and you know, this table, even though it is made with the PARF guide, which happens to be within a 2/1000th of an inch accuracy when I do cross cutting using just the bench dogs, and it is accurate enough as I go like this and put this together that you can see these line up perfectly. So this is what I've come up with. Hopefully it helps somebody else. And of course, if I get a different length drawer slide, I can easily reprint this and just have to figure out, well, which hole does it go in and which side do I use up against the panel for the specific increment of holes that I want. It might be that I use this one for more than one hole. Or however it turns out. So I label it. It works out for me. Of course, as I just said before, I have it labeled where the top is there. You may label the bottoms. Whatever way you do it, it just needs to be consistent, and I think it would work out well for you. So I hope this video has been helpful and not too long, but informational enough that you can see how this might benefit your process. So appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. If you like the video, hit like so other people can see it and see it advertised to them as well. I just wanted to also show before I forgot, this is the opposite panel for the opposite side of the cabinet. And then of course you would have your center partition, which is going to lay one way and the other way. But this is then the opposite one where the top is over here. And then of course I want to use those other markers. So I don't know if I actually zoomed in so that you could see that before. But yeah, you can see these markers through here. And again, I can run this one with the fifth. I can go in reverse and do the fifth hole and the fourth hole, so I don't have to continually change these two things back and forth. So maybe in the future with my new table that's a little bit wider, I think it's 36 inches I'm thinking about doing, maybe I would be able to run it in this way. And if I'm able to, so that I can get the long holes going this way, maybe I could get it so that I can have these dog holes in the center for this particular thing here, and I don't have to move them. So if I can do that at that point, which I think I will be able to actually, so it's just the challenge here is the width of the front going this way. The dog hole would have to be here, and I think I'm just one hole short of being able to make it. I would need one more dog hole. So I have 8 on this table. If I get 9 on the next one, which I will, I'll have like 10 or 11. I should be able to put them in the opposite way, and then I don't have to move those super dogs at all. I should just be able to mount the rail this way and just slide the panel. Hole 1, hole 3, 4, and 5, and done. Move the panel out, put the next one. 1, 2, 3, or 1, 3, 4, and 5. And there we go. It's done. So anyways, again, hope you enjoyed the video.